Something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
My dear friends and listeners, I have such a special show for you today, and I welcome you to Crafting a Meaningful Life. And I'm Mary Crafts, and I have the absolute privilege of having with me today Mike Norton. Mike, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mary. And it's an honor to be here and be able to spend time with you and get to know your beautiful soul. You're an amazing person, and I'm so grateful to be here.
Well, can we talk about that amazing person for just a second? And how this amazing person connected with your amazing person. I mean, that was like one sort of freaky meeting.
It was.
You and I were attending, I was on the panel for a symposium on teenage suicide and mental health, those kind of things. And you were talking to a friend of mine. I never even met you before. I walked up to Cynthia to say hi to her. And you turned and looked at me, and I felt like my soul came right out of my body and just connected with yours. And I rarely have had that experience. I've had it before, but not where I so instantly felt it, Mike. And I knew right then, I asked you right there and then, would you be on my podcast? Did you think I was like totally weird?
No. The easiest yes I could ever say.
Oh, that was wonderful. So let's start with Mike, a little bit about your history so people know who you are, kind of what you do. So I asked both those questions, what you do and who you are, as we delve into this wonderful podcast today.
Oh, I'm so honored. And one thing that kind of came up and I want to echo just a little bit about something that I would like to touch a little bit on later in the podcast is our reality reflects who we are or what we see in other people as well. And so I want to first commend you as well as, it takes someone that has done a lot of work or a special soul to see specialness in somebody else. And if we could start seeing that more in other people, it will help everybody on this earth become the best version of themselves. And so one, I commend you for being able to see that and have the love and self-love that you have for yourself and how you're able to see that in others. So thank you for everything that you do. And as far as like my background, I've had a very guided, unique experience in my lifetime. I've started 3 companies. I've been a part of many startups. I've invested in a lot of startups, predominantly in the restaurant tech space. Have built to 3 tech startups in the restaurant tech space. Ovation Crisp was the last one that I did, where we had a data platform to collect information on customers. We grew to 400 restaurants. We're processing $100 million in revenue through those. And throughout my startup experience, it's led me to gain knowledge and information on how I can be the best leader and how I want to show up in different environments. And then also how it has influenced me in my spiritual path and my spiritual journey. One of the things that I was able and had the opportunity to learn about was me and my 3 U.S. co-founders from Chris. We were all voted off of our board by our board in our company, and we lost everything. Our shares were devalued. Our team was lost. And that really started in 2020, was a pivotal moment in my spiritual and my identity as a human. I really wasn't sure who I was. I mean, I was on top of the world. I thought I had everything. And then all of a sudden everything was taken away from me. And that at that moment, my wife was also dealing with her own mental health journey. And that was like the biggest, darkest time of my life when I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was happening around me. It was right when COVID hit. There's so much uncertainty, and that led me on this path to try and understand who I was and who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in this lifetime. And it's led me down to find the top life coaches, the top therapists, the top doctors, trying to understand this human existence and mental health I had the opportunity after that to go work and manage an investment fund called Space Station Investments, where we invested in 85 high performing consumer grade startups or bought influencers and
Yeah.
celebrities into deals to help their businesses grow. And then I most recently was building tech at Dirty Dough, about to launch my next tech startup
And I can
in the
speak
restaurant
from
space.
firsthand experience about the quality of the dirty dough cookie. Yes.
With snaps. That always makes me happy to hear. It's who doesn't like a good cookie anyway?
Right?
It's makes anybody happy. It puts a smile on their face, especially when it's something so simple that can make someone smile.
Yeah.
That's amazing to hear. Um, and was about to go fundraise for my next tech startup, and the universe kind of said, "Nope, boy, this is not the path that you're going to be on, and you're going to focus on creating an investment vehicle for helping elevate consciousness on the planet."
So, where most people take venture capital and look for ways to make profit, to make money, to be bigger than, better than, you decide to focus on investing money, venture capital, into making a better world.
I did, I did, and there's some theses that I have behind that.
Okay.
Um, I One, at the end of the day, I think if we go back to something that we both agree on is love and a connected oneness. I believe that that is where we need to head. I believe that's where we are missing in society. If we look at this meta principle of where we are in this existence, we've had certain stressful elements throughout our lifetime, and there's a white paper called Cosmoerotic Humanism. It's kind of this crazy term, but it's how human
But I like it.
evolution
I like it.
worked. Who doesn't like that name? It's so catchy. But it's this concept that humans are going from Homo sapiens to Homo amor, which means how do we move from just being human to humans of love, humans of connectedness? And there's a whole bunch of principles in there of causes, but when humans have gone through these traumatic events in their lifetime, whether it's war, whether it's financial collapse, whether it's COVID, we, especially in this lifetime, the past 75 years has been plagued with a lot of very high stressful events that has caused people to turn inward and ask for a better narrative, a
Yeah.
better story, a better way to exist. And
Thank you,
that's
COVID.
accelerated. Thank you, COVID.
Yeah. I
There
mean,
is some
that was
silver
the
lining.
best outcome of COVID that could have ever happened. Yeah.
It absolutely could have been. And to that point, like it really forced us to ask questions about, how do humans actually operate? Um, and how do we seek out connection from other people? And Elon Musk, he's someone that I respect his way of logic, his way of questioning, getting down to
Mm.
first principles. Um, he talks a lot about how, if we are in this galaxy and we are on this floating rock called Earth, and we have not met other higher intelligent beings in this entire universe, one of the most important things that we have is our consciousness. How do we think? How do we behave? How is our awareness? And that should be one of the top things that we take that for granted right now. But how are we looking at that and saying, how can we, one, protect it? How can we enhance it? And how can we create a better world for us all to live in? And that should be our top priority. Um,
Mm.
and so the investment fund that I'm going after in my thesis is that because of all these events that have happened, especially most recently, there's been a change in narrative that people want to seek out and have a better version of themselves. They're asking more questions. They're seeking truth, especially with the connected and advancements of technology that we have, be it in social media, be it in AI advancements. We have more information at our fingertips, and we will have more information than we ever have. And that's going to cause people to ask more
Yeah.
questions. They're going to seek more answers from themselves. A lot of the constraints that people have are going to be removed. in the next 5 to 10 years. And so how do we get ahead of that? And how do we create places where people can go seek answers to one? And I see it on two spectrums. I see we have consciousness right now. The whole goal is to get to the best version of authenticity of ourselves. How do we raise the belief systems that we have
Yeah.
that we can share with others, tell story of love? But we have people in trauma, and we have people that are stuck that don't know how to get help. And then we have people also that are high performers, high performing entrepreneurs that are seeking to elevate what they're able to do and what they can incorporate, how they can live longer through longevity practices and different things like that. And so the whole premise is behind the fund is, one, how can we get out of our heads and reconnect with our hearts? And then what does that do for us to show up, whether it's for our communities, for our planet, for each other? And half of the fund is actually going to be given away. I have a firm belief that it doesn't
Ah,
take one person, it takes a community, especially in a practice like this. So half of it's going to advisors and people that are smarter than myself, and then half of it's going to charity and early stage research, to be able to ask and find out answers to the questions that we have, to help live and make a better life for us.
so you used a couple phrases in that really brought my attention. They just went like, "Whoa, that's a zinger! Oh, that's a zinger!" Several times you have used the word "best version" of
Mm,
yourself. Uh, I remember that was a book that I read, The Seven Levels of Intimacy, and just really kept coming to that back when I believed, because of my Puritan upbringing, that
mm,
any sort of self love was bad, and that any sort of focus on you meant that you were a narcissist, that you were a sinner, that you weren't humble. That's how I was raised. And to let go in my adult life of that belief that it's all about serving others first was huge for me. But
that's
to
amazing.
realize that it was almost impossible for me to give others full and unjudgmental love, unconditional love, unless I could offer that to myself. And when that healing happens in self, then just look at how much ability I have to love others. And so when you talk about being your best version of yourself, how do you define that? What's your MO for best version, and how do you find that?
I think that that's a floating gauge, and I want to set that because I don't want an expectation. I think anytime we have expectations on ourselves, it it prevents us, or sets a bar that we might not know exists. But I think if I I start telling the story, or asking questions like, when was the last time you did things that you've loved as a child? When's the last time you
Ah,
giggled, you played, you were creative, like you went back to this playful state of like there was no constraints on who you were.
mm,
You were yourself. And I like to set that because that's a groundwork that we can all go back to, that's familiar. Um, and then when it comes to being the best version of ourselves, how do we take some of those learnings or things that we love to do and then bring them back into our own reality? Sometimes as adults, we take things very seriously and we lose track of who we actually are. So I think it's
mm,
a step process. One, we have to figure out who we are. What do we want to do? What is our purpose on this earth? And then how do we get and how do we heal and how do we use our reality as a mirror to then show us things or pieces of ourselves that are imperfect or incomplete or that need to be reflected upon? Because I think we all have a different path that we're on. It could be different areas of faith, finances, family, um, all these different aspects that make us human, fitness, all these stories and narratives. And we need to really reflect on what that means for each area of those aspects of our life and see what that means for us to be complete in them.
mm.
Um, I think there's a lot of self reflection that we can do in going around trauma, and what that means. to have trauma. And I think that's a definition that everybody should research on their own. A lot of people have dealt with sexual trauma. A lot of people have dealt with abuse. A lot of people have anxiety and depression. And I think the 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 goal would be, how do we get out of these states of being dependent on the past or the future and just be in the present moment.
Mhm.
And when we can be in that present moment, we're able to show up as the best version of ourselves and be able to reflect and continue this path called life.
I I love the phrase your best because it's not your perfect self, but your best
Yep.
version. And here's the good news, Mike, is that today you're talking to the best version of me, which wasn't
Mm.
yesterday. It's better today than it was yesterday, but it's a long way. And I'm not even sure I know what the perfect version of me looks like. But to say that I am imperfect reflects then that the goal is perfection,
Yeah,
rather than to say I am my best version and I'm seeking that. And because I've said forever, almost every talk I've ever given, that perfectionism will kill you,
it
but the
absolutely will.
seeking of excellence will inspire you every day of your life. And so I love that I am less than my best self sometimes, but I know what my best self feels like and looks like, and I can move in that direction. You also mentioned something. Um, I'm trying to think what that, I went to. Don't forget that, Mary. Come back to that. Oh, I know what it was. The idea of love and oneness. Do you coincide those words as the same?
I think they can mean different things, but they also have components that are the same. I believe that, we are all the same individual, in the sense that we are all unique in our own ways, but we all have aspects of each other that we hold on to. And I believe love is a platform or frequency that connects all of us. And so it's one in itself, but it's also different. It's a different energy in a sense.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you're incorporating that principle, that value of love into what we consider the business world, where it didn't reside for a long time. You didn't have CEOs getting up in front of their staff and saying, I really want us to love each other more. They
Mm.
would have been laughed off the stage. They never talked about that. The transition that you're heading the forest of is the greatest thing that we can do for ourselves, for each other, for what we consider the business world, is to see it really no different than our private world, our personal world, and that we
And
are the
that
same.
and I think that's where there the new reality or the new story that we need to tell is that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to talk about mental health. I mean, you look at a lot of these high performers. You have Tony Robbins, Gary Brecka, Peter Attia, all talking about
Yeah.
longevity and performance. And I think if we look at the Hawkins scale of emotions, like, you have everything from like shame, guilt, anger at the bottom, as and then on the top we have oneness and pure enlightenment, and love and gratitude sit kind of like right in this middle,
Yep.
a
Yep.
threshold that balances. And I think we've all been in moments of life where, we've been angry, we've been frustrated, and if you look back at where your creativity was, your problem solving ability, you feel stuck. You feel like you don't know where to go. You don't have the answers. They don't come as fast. And if we were to take a step back and we think about organizations and businesses and creativity, because that's what all organizations are. You're solving problems to deliver
Right.
value to a customer. And if you could be in that state of love or a state of gratitude, your ideas are going to flow. Your communication between your teams is going to prosper. It's going to change everything about the business. And so why not leverage that as a tactic instead of keeping your teams in fear and or entitlement or greed? As a leader, I think a lot of times we lose sight of who our stakeholders are, what we're doing it for. Like, our job as a leader is to serve our teams and serve our customer. Like, we are in service of them. I think this mentality of like, what's in it for me, or the wealth that comes from it, that's a byproduct of the game of being in business, but we are serving our teams and our customers at the end of the day. That's who we're responsible to. That's our boss. And I think love is the way that's going to be able to really enhance what we're able to do and produce, not only in business, but in our communities, that it's going to set the stage for the next generation and enhancement of humanity.
Yeah. That need to let go of fear. And that day we met, I talked a little bit about the base of all fear is the fear of not being enough. And
Mm,
that's why we strive so hard. What's why we strive to make money, to be out there, to be in the limelight, to be this, to be that, is because we're trying to prove to ourselves, dang it, I am enough. Because the world, including our parents, have taught us that we're not enough. Even the best parents, unfortunately, create that kind of scenario when children are young, when they say like, "Whoa, what's wrong with you? How could you do that?" Okay, well, what is wrong with me? I don't know. It's like, your sister would never do that. Oh, I know my sister wouldn't do that. She's perfect. So the little things that we grow up with, and I certainly left home with that feeling like that I was not enough. I never
mm,
would be, and the process of growing into that. Um, and so when we can focus on releasing those fears that have held us bound, then we can begin to step into loving self. And they have to go
yes.
hand in hand, step by step together. You don't say, okay, I'm going to release all fear first, and then I'm going to love myself. Okay. But it's like, I'm going to let go of this little fear and acknowledge it in me and that I am enough. And
Yes.
then you have enough
Absolutely.
courage to release one more fear. And then you say, wow, that was pretty awesome. And
Yep.
just like some of my fears was that no matter where I went, people were looking at me
Mm,
negatively, had something bad to think about me. And so, can you imagine as a business owner how hard it was to walk into a meeting, to go in a sort of networking event, so on and so on? And it finally dawned on me that I had to release that and instead replace it with the thought process of when I walk into this room, everyone's going to love me because I'm going to
oh,
love them. It's transformative
yes.
when you could begin to live that.
I want to say one thing about that because it ties back into an earlier comment that you had of the statement that we were taught not to love ourselves as much,
Yeah.
and I think that goes back to like as we evolve and grow older, we have a responsibility to learn to love ourselves. I think that's where it all
Yeah.
starts too. And the
Yeah.
more we can love ourselves and release all these expectations of what society has put on us, the more we can be ourselves. And so I really wanted to echo that home because I think that is such an important part of what we are all learning right now. And the other part that I wanted to say is like fear is fear is a let me think of the word. Fear is a gentle nudge that we are
Mm.
human, because fear in and of itself is an evolutionary byproduct of stepping into the unknown. Even this is something that I've been thinking a lot about recently, um, because in starting a new venture, you're doing something that's never been done before. And I was talking
Oh,
to
yeah.
one of my good friends, and I was in a little bit of fear, anxiety, because I was like, "What's the next step?" And she reminded me of like, just remember, you created this. Like, you created this reality that you're in. Don't be fearful. Like, use fear as a guidance of saying you are in the unknown, but you're taking that next step in faith to get to where you need to be. And so
Mm.
use that fear as a guide rail to really step into the next phase of who you are.
And I've had people present that to me before where they think fear has been a good thing for me. And that's
Mm,
not the kind of fear I speak of. I
yep.
speak of the debilitating fear
Yep.
that keeps us stuck.
And that's
Your
the hard one.
fear, you had motivating fear, which was, oh my
Correct.
gosh, but you recognize it that this is just a fear, and fear never got you anywhere. So then you
Nope.
moved past it. And I
Completely
think
agree.
that that's the mark of any true entrepreneur is they have to learn how to move past that pretty quickly.
Yes, absolutely.
Another one of the things that you have as kind of a base inside of yourself is a word that you call consciousness.
Mm.
So let's talk about that.
I would love to. I would love to. I think, consciousness has evolved throughout humanity and existence. If we say the earth is 4.9 billion years old and we are living on this floating rock, and we as humans have this ability to see others, see ourselves, see and have awareness for who we are and what we are existing in, it makes you wonder, like, how important is this? What is the
Mm.
belief system? What are the values that we hold as individuals, as society, as the world? And consciousness can mean many things to many people. Um, and that's where I believe that there needs to be a framework of unity, going back to love, going back to service, going back to gratitude and compassion. So that way we can all share a common thread in what we see as consciousness or awareness. And how do we then enhance consciousness?
I love that. I think of all the years I spent in my life looking outside of myself for answers.
Mm,
What someone was saying, what someone was writing, how someone was acting. And it always fell short for me
mm,
until I began to turn and look at my own consciousness and where were the answers in me and what did I
yes.
have that was unique to me to offer. And my level of consciousness, I may no longer be religious, but I'm more spiritual today than I've ever been in my life. And that I
I
spend every day focused on that. I think long term about who I am, my purpose, my mission, my vision, and what am I doing today that brings me closer to that. I spend time in meditation, all of it turned inward for healing. And then I have the ability to turn it outward for giving.
mm. And I think I want to let's elaborate a little bit on that topic of healing. Um, one of the things that, I grew up in a predominantly LDS Mormon faith. I live here in Utah. We are surrounded by amazing people. Um, and when it comes to like meditation, when it comes to other tools and resources, it's very hard to understand or know what else exists outside of that paradigm.
Mm.
I believe that we all need to stay curious. We all need to ask questions. We all need to have wonder and amazement in this lifetime. Um, but when it comes to finding healing, going back to the path and what led me here, is the ability to ask questions outside of what I knew were possible solutions, and then fighting to get those. And so one of the things that came across my desk was, while I was investing into companies, was ketamine and psilocybin, um, and
Yes.
really being able to heal different parts of ourselves with different methods or technologies that might not exist. And there's spectrums that we can use to heal. Because I think what you got at in how beautifully you said that is like, the the more tools and resources that we have to heal ourselves, the quicker we can get to giving
Oh,
and
yeah.
giving back to others. And so I want to say, like, there are even in my journey, there's times where I felt stuck. I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know where or what to do to get the healing that I needed or that my wife needed when she was dealing with her
Mm.
extreme mental health, anxiety and depression. And it really allowed me to ask more questions about what exists. And so there are tools, and I don't believe that psychedelics are the full answer. I think they're one component of healing who we are.
Hmm. There's certainly a
But I
piece
don't
of,
believe that
yeah.
anybody, absolutely, I don't believe that they are the complete holistic approach. I believe that, like, our bodies are the most complex piece of technology, and it knows what it
Yeah.
needs. And there are tools that we can use, whether it's meditation, getting better sleep, exercise, getting sunlight, gratitude, journaling. Psychedelics can be a part of it. There's a lot of like research and studies that are going into asking more questions about what are the tools and what are the research that we can do to help unlock our brains and the potential that we have. And Andrew Huberman has a podcast talking about psychedelics. There is MDMA for PTSD is being approved by the FDA, hopefully in the year 2024, so we can create better conversations around some of these tools and technologies that exist that have either been frowned upon or shoved underneath the rug because we didn't know how to have conversations about it.
Well, and
And
we
I'm
just
more
remember the 70s and the 60s when I grew up, that was for recreational getting high and just
yes,
having fun and becoming unconscious. But now the use of them to become conscious,
yes,
it's the same, a lot of the same, not all the same, chemical substances, but now being used with intention
yes,
and the healing that they can bring. And I'm with you. I hope that we wake up as a country, as a state, to that being a peace. It being no different than saying, oh, I have a lot of pain and I'm going to take a Lortab. Well, that Lortab um, wears off and your pain isn't any different.
no, it's not.
So to be able to take some sort of a psychedelic that allows you to see your trauma and to experience the path, and that when it wears off, that there's been a deeper healing.
Yes,
Why would we not embrace that kind of a drug as opposed to this kind of a drug?
completely agree.
Why embrace alcohol when it wears off? You're worse off. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So there's so much out there to research. If people were to really want to delve in and learn more about that piece, Mike, where would you suggest they go to do that?
There's a lot of really good research. Andrew Huberman, he's one of the top scientists out of Stanford. He has a podcast talking about MDMA, psilocybin, some of the neuro effects and benefits that it has. There's a lot of resources around MAPS. If you research MAPS psychedelics, it'll come up with a lot of studies that they've done. I believe that a lot of this stuff is new. It's kind of pioneering a new way of mental health. And I always say go research and
Yeah.
also have conversations. I think there's enough people in our different communities that might have their own experiences around it. But I always tell people do it with the right intentions. Be
Yes.
and be curious about it. I think there's alternatives that, even in the state of Utah, I think it's becoming one of the top ketamine clinic states in the
Yeah.
entire like West Coast. But what does that mean to actually go to a ketamine clinic? What does it mean to have the right set and setting? What does it mean to have the right experience to actually go through the trauma and not just go and get these medications, get sent home and not know what to do? I think that's where, if I were to say one thing about psychedelics, it's have the right levels of
Mm.
integration therapy afterwards so you can really
Yes.
process what a beautiful experience that you're going to have, and then be able to go through and talk about some of the traumas and experiences that you might be facing in this lifetime. Because nobody should be stuck, and we should be able to have the tools and resources to be able to improve ourselves.
It's an interesting journey, and I probably won't spend much more time on this, but the very first time that I journeyed into the world of psychedelics, I it didn't have for me at all the experience that I thought I would have, from
Mm,
what other people had told me there was experience.
yeah,
And I just kept seeing things walk toward me.
very
And I would
so.
stop and ask, so what are you doing here?
Mm,
And I was absolutely sure that a lion was going to come walking toward me because that's how I'd lived my life. The powerful, strong lion, defender of all, blah, blah, you could hear my roar anywhere. And I just kept waiting. And actually, I can remember thinking to myself, okay, where are you? I was born in August. I'm a Leo. So where are you? And looking. And finally, I saw an animal walking toward me. And I thought, this is the lion. And when it got closer, I realized that it wasn't a lion at all. It was the most defenseless of creatures. It was a rabbit.
Mm.
And it just sat there looking at me, and I asked, "What are you doing here?" And we just sat there the longest time, and finally it came to me. The rabbit didn't speak because what? Rabbits don't make noise. It was
Mm.
silent. But what do rabbits have better than almost anyone? Ears.
Years.
And it was
Mm.
just listening. I knew it was time now for me to walk from my lion, still appreciative and loving every piece of power and strength it gave me. But now to move, to doing much less roaring and a lot more listening.
Mm.
Now, to learn that about me at this stage of life, I'm not sure I would have learned that without that kind of journey experience.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about this much on this podcast, but I do appreciate you bringing up and opening the door that we might talk more about it. Yeah.
I think it's one that's a new conversation, and it's more of I put it out there because if there's anybody that's seeking help that doesn't know where to find answers, that feels extremely stuck, I believe that they should know or be able to ask more questions about it, and that's for them in their journey. I'm not a medical expert, but I believe
Right.
that it has helped a lot of people, and I believe it's going to be a big part of our future. But I wanted to spend a second and hint at, you talk about listening, and you talk about that message that came through. Um, that is a big part of the belief that I have with tuning into our hearts. Our heart has more intuition than we could ever fathom. It's 10 times more powerful in understanding the universe than our brain has. Our brain only has understanding and information of our learned experiences or events that have happened in our life. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious what that has done for you as you've stepped back and listened more and really
Mm.
changed your belief system around that.
I find myself interacting with others differently.
Mm.
I used to think it was for me to give wisdom to everyone. I still think that a little bit.
And that's okay.
But I also know that another big part is when I simply say to people, "Tell me about that." And then I allow them a safe place to open up and to share and to be vulnerable. I
Mm.
share my personal experiences because it shows my willingness to be vulnerable, like the rabbit. I don't
Yeah.
need to stand in full strength and always look like Mary's got all of it together. I can be vulnerable and small. I can be weak.
Mm.
So it's allowed me that safe place to claim that.
Mm.
And that simply in listening, I have opened up so many wonderful relationships as they have found a safe place. If they're another rabbit, think how safe they feel with me. If
Completely
I'm a
agree.
lion, how safe do they feel with me? Oh, not very. So it's definitely shifted how I see myself. And I came to the realization that the lion was such a huge part of me because of my fear. If I stood strong, invincible, all powerful, he's the king of the jungle. Everyone's afraid of the lion, even the elephant. And so no one, I would seem like what? At the top of the food chain, even though I felt inside at the bottom of the food chain. And when I was able to let go of that and then look at how that felt to be at the bottom, and then maybe that wasn't a bad place to be. I could begin to let go one by one some of those fears and step out every day to the world as a rabbit,
What did
vulnerable.
that do for you to have empathy?
Uh, I've always felt that I was an empath, but now it's magnified 100-fold. I can't watch things on TV because I feel inside of me their pain. When the war broke out in Ukraine, and Russia tanks were coming in those first 3 days. And the man laid down in front of the tank. He would rather die than let that tank into his country. And I saw him there, and I thought, I have to go. It wasn't that he failed. He just needed more people. And so I packed my bags, and in a week I was in Ukraine because I saw them as me and me as them. It's created a sense of oneness in me that I can never walk away from.
What does that mean?
Who's the interviewer here?
You're giving me all these questions. Okay,
No,
I'll let you go back.
No, I love this. So what's your last question?
Well, now I forgot it. It must not be important at this moment. So I'll let you go.
So we are over time. I have so much to talk to you about. Really, Mike, the last big thing that you wrote to me in a text message, which is really what opened this up, blew it up in my mind that we were going to have the best conversation, was you wrote a new story, your new story, my new story, our world's new story. And I know at deep levels that it's that new story of how we see things that's going to transform this planet. Because you and I both have heard so many people say everything is going to hell in a handbasket. People are worse. There's more wars, more hate, more this. That's probably true. But the reverse is also true.
Completely.
And the more that we can speak about it, the more we enlighten everyone to the beauty of love, of consciousness, and how we are going to write our own new story. So I guess I would ask this favor of you. Would you come back again, Mike, and can we talk about how we write our new story?
Would love to. And I'll give a little teaser.
Okay.
I think anytime a system is broken, we can take a business analogy. That's why startups exist. We get to disrupt in a current way or status quo. We are not here to continue and make little augmentations. We need to change, and we need to create a whole new way of being. One that is grounded in love, that is grounded in truth. One that we do not tolerate anything but that we can hold space and we can be there for others as they go through their own process, their own healing. One that is balanced in the masculine and the feminine so that we can bring back the powers and the ability to listen and to hear and to support and to be there for others and to really be one with love. One connected, one that we could see each other, just like you were able to see me when we first met. And I think that is a teaser for the new reality that we need to be in so we can help be there for others and be the light that we need to be in this new world.
Well, I hope our listeners are excited for that episode, because wouldn't it be wonderful to truly have a vision of what that new reality looks like and then have the mission of going toward it? I always thought, Mike, that my mission was to heal myself. And I thought, I was able to be of service. And I was able to be of service tremendously in my company all the time. And I thought that was my legacy. And my children now run my company, second generation.
Beautiful.
Over 5 years retired. But then when I retired and I began to look for what's next, I realized that the biggest thing I'd ever overcome in my life were my levels of fear. And that was the legacy I would leave next. I thought that would do me to the 105 that I want to live to. And then a whole new vision was given to me. And I'll share that with you next time.
I cannot wait.
All right, my friend. This is going to be the perfect podcast to launch into the new year with our new story. Thank you so much for being here and opening up yourself with vulnerability as well. That's why we had a good podcast, is because we're both willing to be vulnerable.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Crafting a meaningful life.